Hello and welcome to my introductory video to my new series, Get Decked. Up until now I've been the Precon Decon guy, but this is my new series where we're going to build some casual budget decks for Magic the Gathering. I'm just going to use this video to explain what you can expect coming up in the next few videos. Consider this a kind of like a trial run. We're going to see how it goes with the next few videos, and if it's successful and people like it, I might do more of them. So I'm kind of like, I'm the Precon Decon guy. We like the pre-constructed decks around here, and the reason why I like them is basically because I think they've always been a good gateway to the game for new players to get into it, and also importantly, keep people in the game. These kind of like casual, cheap, like low power games where people can kind of just have fun. It doesn't require a lot of like money or like time investment to like essentially pick up one of these decks and kind of have a good time. And of course, we don't have them in the game these days. I mean, we do have pre-constructed products, but they're pretty much just either Commander products or the Challenger Pioneer decks, both of which are kind of expensive, and I would argue kind of difficult as an access point for new players, like or people who maybe are just only kind of casually interested in the game. I've sort of said it before, but one of my issues with Commander is I don't think it's a great introductory point for the game to slap down a 100 card deck, in front of someone with singletons of all these different cards with different mechanics and say like, right, this is Magic the Gathering, just get on with it, because it's not. It's a different format. We're here for 60 card constructed formats, which I feel personally that's Magic at its purest form. But anyway, as I said, we don't have pre-constructed decks anymore, but I put this community post up a little while ago where I basically threw out this suggestion like, would you like to see me make a series of videos where I build cheap, super casual decks similar to the Card Kingdom battle decks? And lots of people liked that. So yeah, here we are, as I thought was a little bit of different content so I can just recharge my batteries before I go back into looking at precon decks. I'm not going to abandon doing precon decks. I do love looking at those, but we just need to pivot for a little while, just work on something different, and just like have a breath of fresh air, basically. So the Card Kingdom battle decks, I've lamented these a little bit in a previous community post, in that like so I'm in the UK and like these are just like not available, or they are, but like the shipping costs would be ridiculous. But essentially what the battle decks are pre-constructed decks made by Card Kingdom, which is like a big online seller. And their decks focusing around like a particular strategy. They're not particularly expensive. They use cards from kind of all over Magic's history. Usually, they focus on like the most recent sets, that kind of thing. But I think they do spread out a little bit and take cards from anywhere. But you know what I mean. But they make some pretty, I think, decent decks. Usually from, I'm guessing their excess backstock of like commons and uncommons and stuff, but like looking at the decks, like they're pretty good. I think they're pretty well regarded within the community, and yeah, I just wanted to make some decks because I like deck building. I think I like the idea of it, so I wanted to do something like that where I make some decks of my own in the same vein as these battle decks, and with the idea, right, that you could use them to introduce like friends and family who maybe are sort of interested in Magic the Gathering into the game, and so they can like play and have a good time. Because I've personally like even these days, like I'm into Magic, but I don't really have any decks of my own. I don't have any kind of like up to date modern legal decks. I've got a couple of friends who like have dabbled in Magic, but they're not into it. But like they would probably like to play if there was like a easy to learn casual budget deck that they could kind of just pick up and play, kind of treating Magic almost like a board game, in that you can just come into it, pick up a deck, and just kind of have like a bit of fun with it and just go. That's what I like doing. I like introducing people into the game with stuff like that. Because if you just provide everything, then people are able to play without having to rely on bringing their own stuff. But that's what I'm aiming for, like these kind of casual level decks that like new players or people who have like less experience with the game can just like pick up and play and kind of like have a good time. So let's just go through the rules I set myself when I made these decks. So the decks cost 30 freedom units or less at time of recording. I should have specified and said US dollars here. Obviously, I know other countries use dollars. I would have used pounds, but according to my analytics, like most of my viewers are in the States, so hence why we're going with US dollars. But we're setting a hard budget there, so it does mean we're not loading these decks with like play sets of shock lands or like super pushed rares, anything like that. So they're going to be cheap. So if you did want to put them together, it's not going to be like a huge investment. Decks are 60 cards intended for 2-player games, so we're not going to like put a bunch of like maybe like multiplayer cards in there, like cards that care about multiple opponents. They are set at 60 cards. So we're not doing Commander here. It is, I mean, I'm not saying that some of these decks won't have maybe like a focus on particularly legendary creatures, or certain themes that have been expressed in Commander decks before. But I'm just saying, 60 cards, same as the old pre-constructed decks I've been looking at. Decks are going to be on a whole 36 non-land and 24 land. That's just kind of like a nice, neat way of splitting out. Might fudge it sometimes, might be 37 and 23, or maybe like 35-25, depending on the mana curve. But that's again kind of just a kind of a bit of a rule where we're going, just a bit of a guideline. So in terms of like card variance and consistency, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use 12 different non-land cards. And so I did, if we got 36 non-land cards, that's really like 12 play sets of 3, right? So I think that's going to be the ideal blend of kind of variance in gameplay, but also like consistency. And I say we might not, there's some cards might be like 4 copies of, and some might be 2 to kind of balance it out. But for the most part, we're sticking to a hard limit of 12 non-land cards, or like 12 different non-land cards, not 12 non-land cards. Full stop. That'd be ridiculous. But I hope you get what I mean. As for non-basic lands, probably I'm going to limit it to maybe like one like non-basic land, like probably like like a gain land, or maybe like something like Evolving Wild, something like that. So again, not like a lot of money going into the mana base. We're going to say no format restrictions in terms of like banned cards, saying these are meant to be like super casual decks, so we're not like using stuff like it's banned in Modern or banned in Pauper or anything. It's just the format is casual kitchen table, where there's essentially no restrictions. And I mean, for the most part anyway, like the super powerful like pushed banned cards are usually more expensive anyway, so they would probably take us over budget anyway. And then just the last 2 points are not really like deck building restrictions as such, but we're going to go for like a low to mid complexity in terms of deck strategy, deck construction, so it can be accessible for new players. We're not going to do any kind of like convoluted combos, anything like that. We're going to kind of stick to iconic strategies like like Weenie or like aggro. I'm not saying there won't be some control decks out there, but like we're still going to keep it fairly accessible and low to mid complexity. And the final point here, again, this is not a deck building restriction, but it's just an ethos I want to stick to, is that a casual deck doesn't mean the deck is going to be weak or bad. Like, I still feel like the decks I've made are still like fun. They still feel good to play. They're not going to be loaded with like like bad vanilla creatures, kind of like the pre-constructed decks we've looked at before. It's not going to be like cards that you can easily identify as being bad, so you would take them out. Like, no, they are decks that I've made that I would be happy to play, and include cards that I think are good and fit like the deck's kind of strategy or theme or whatever. So yeah, those are my rules for my Get Decked construction challenge. During the videos as well, I'm also going to do a little rundown. I'm just going to explain how they're going to be structured. So rather than just kind of presenting a deck list and talking through the cards, I'm going to split into like 4 sections. So the actual cards in the deck are going to be under basically 3 categories. And if you've seen like an old Trash Talk video, I've sort of discussed this, like how I build decks before. So the 3 sections are going to be how are we winning, and that's going to be the win condition. Which is usually going to be like combat damage, or like the particular cards that are specifically our win condition. So I say it might be like a big creature, it might be like a particular artifact or enchantment, that kind of thing. So yeah, if it's like, oh, we're playing like a dragon deck, so how are we winning? Like, oh, a bunch of big dragons in the air, so we're just going to do it that way. What helps us win? So this is going to be cards that support the win condition. So this is like ramp, buff spells, that kind of thing. What stops them winning, which is how we disrupt our opponents. So this is going to be stuff like removal, discard, bounce, that kind of stuff. And the final section is going to be what stops us winning, because I do think it's important to discuss this in terms of like deck strategy and stuff, like what you need to be aware of, like what is vulnerable within the deck that you need to be like aware of, like protecting, or like like what could be like a bad matchup. And I just thought that's like an important aspect to cover when talking about decks. So now that's covered, let's begin with Get Decked. So I hope you join me tomorrow for the first video of that. And yeah, we'll I say we're gonna have like 10 of these. We're gonna do them, I think, every few days. We're just gonna have them throughout March. So March is going to be Get Decked trial run. And yeah, I hope you enjoy the next few videos of these budget casual decks. So I say hope you join me for those. But until then, thanks for watching, listening, and have a great day.